Keith didn't care about Olivia's frosty reception, though. He looked at the young man beside old Mr. Strauss and said, "And I believe this is the famous deputy CEO of Olive Industries, Calvin Carter." Calvin nodded his head slightly. The disdain and hostility in his eyes became even stronger. His father and grandfather were old Mr. Strauss's confidants, and he'd become trusted enough that he'd been given the position of deputy CEO. Calvin was one of Olivia's many admirers, and with the two families' close relationship, the rest of the world thought that the chances of him and Olivia getting married were very high. When Keith saw his expression, he laughed to himself. No matter who it was, if they dared mess with him, he'd send them straight to hell. He turned to the girl beside Olivia. She was beautiful too, but sat beside Olivia, she was totally overshadowed. Keith smiled faintly and said, "If I'm not mistaken, you're Sienna Young, daughter of the Young Corporation's chairman?" Sienna snorted lightly. She'd grown up with Olivia and was very close to the Strauss family. She spoke bluntly. "You're Keith Sanderberg, right? We've already figured out your background. I don't want to say anything too unpleasant in front of Mr. Strauss, but with your family background and financial situation, you and Olivia will never be together. I advise you to give up on the idea now." Keith smiled faintly. "I've heard of you, but that doesn't mean I know you. Let's not discuss whether or not you have the right to talk to me like that, even if you did. What makes you think I'd pay attention to you?" Sienna was furious, but she didn't know how to fight him. She stared at Keith hatefully, as if she was considering how to respond. Olivia's eyebrows wrinkled a little. She understood her friend well. Once she got angry, the scene could become very awkward. She gently pinched Sienna's hand under the table, indicating for her to calm down. Sienna took the hint and snorted lightly before turning away from Keith. The atmosphere was incredibly awkward, but old Mr. Strauss nodded to himself. He'd seen countless young people who were interested in his granddaughter, but no matter who they were, they had all been respectful in front of him, and they had all fawned over Sienna when they realized she was Olivia's best friend. He had invited Sienna today because he wanted to see how Keith behaved with her. Now he could see that Keith's attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. After being ridiculed, he responded with the same level of sarcasm, unwilling to take a loss, but also holding his anger in check. In addition, Mr. Strauss had a feeling in his heart that Keith didn't care about their identities at all. There was even a trace of pride hidden in the depths of his eyes. He was a child from an ordinary family, but the way he held himself wasn't humble. It surprised Mr. Strauss and piqued his curiosity at the same time. Where did this young man's confidence come from? Old Mr. Strauss smiled and said, "All right, that's enough, all of you. Keith, you know about the marriage between Olivia and yourself, yes? However, you were wrong just now about you two not being married yet. I've taken the liberty of settling the matter myself." He nodded to Calvin, who took a red folder from his briefcase and handed it to Keith with a gloomy expression. Keith took a look inside and saw that it was his and Olivia's marriage certificate. The date was today, and it even had the signatures of the officiant and the witnesses. It had all been handled flawlessly. It went to show the power of the Strauss family. If a Strauss said the word, even a marriage certificate could be issued. "This?" Keith smiled wryly and said, "Sir, aren't you being a little hasty?" Old Mr. Strauss smiled back and said, I'm your grandfather's lifelong friend. We made an agreement. Besides, I'm afraid that my granddaughter wouldn't go through with it otherwise. Olivia's face darkened. She hadn't even dated yet, and now she was being forced to get married. How could she not be angry? She looked angrily at Keith, the main culprit. She wanted to divorce him immediately, and then she wanted to send this damn man overseas. It'd be best if he didn't come back for the rest of his life. Keith saw her looking at him as if she wanted to eat him. He touched his nose, feeling a little guilty. On the surface, he was also a victim of an arranged marriage, but in truth, he was the one who had wished it into reality. Just then, the system piped up. System has detected that the connection character Olivia Strauss has a negative opinion of the host, releasing the first system mission. Description: within 30 days, if you can change her attitude to a positive view of you, system will reward you with an unlimited chance to make a wish. If the mission fails, system will randomly deduct 3 skills from you. Keith frowned to himself as the system went on. Current intimacy of host and Olivia Strauss, -70. Mission target, intimacy of over 50. Keith was shocked. He didn't expect the system to start giving out missions. Moreover, this mission involved the concept of a system connection character. The system had scanned Olivia and confirmed her as the most suitable candidate for him to marry. That was why she'd become a relevant person. So why was his and Olivia's intimacy score at -70? The system, he said in his head, "Oh, where's my charm value? Why doesn't it have any effect on Olivia?" Olivia's charm value has been detected as higher than yours. Your charm value, therefore, has no effect on her. When Keith heard this, he suddenly understood. This young lady was powerful, talented, and beautiful, and she had money. Her charm value must be through the roof. In fact, everyone at the table had a pretty high charm value. No wonder they didn't have as good an impression of him as regular people. For the first time, he realized the importance of the charm attribute. The old man saw that Keith was in a daze and thought it was because Keith couldn't accept the arranged marriage. He smiled and said, "Keith, you don't have to worry. Once you marry Olivia, you'll be part of Olive Industries. I'll make arrangements to take care of your parents and your sister as well. You can rest assured on that." Mr. Strauss continued, "I'll also have my people take care of your wedding arrangements and photos later. But you have to care about these things too." Keith smiled wryly when he heard this, while Olivia's face became even darker. If her grandfather wasn't the person she respected most in the world, she would have left already. Sienna continued to sneer, while Calvin looked at Keith with venom in his eyes. Needless to say, the deputy CEO already hated Keith to the core. The old man seemed to ignore all of this, or perhaps he didn't want to point it out. He wanted Keith to solve it himself. The more he talked, the more animated he became. He even talked about the family name and education of their future children. Keith felt his scalp go numb when he heard this. All he wanted was to get the hell out of there. They chatted for a while longer until the old man smiled and said, "I'm going to the bar. You young people should get to know each other." He got up refusing to let anyone else accompany him as he walked away in a good mood. Once he was gone, the situation turned even more awkward than it had been at the start.